Today we're being joined by the Adelaide Crows AFLW list manager, Katrina Gill. Katrina, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to be talking some footy again.
Absolutely, it definitely is. So how did you get into the role of AFLW list management at the Crows? Obviously, you've been at the Crows for a fair while, but how did the list management role come about?
It's probably a bit of an unconventional pathway. I'm not sure if there is a conventional one, but I have a media and communications background, and my first job out of uni was actually working with AFL Media and based in Adelaide and covering the two South Australian-based teams over here. From there, I joined the Crows media and communications team. And when I was in that role, I would basically just hassle our men's recruiting team, Justin Reid and Hamish Ogilvie and Steve McChrystal at the time, to cover the draft and sit in on, behind the scenes interviews, and was always just really interested with the draft and the talent pathway and how it all worked. And when our club was applying for an AFLW license and obviously got a women's team, sort of didn't have as many resourcing as in the men's program, and there was an opportunity to go out and just watch some girls under 18s games. I think it was Eloise Jones and Chloe Shear's year in South Australia, and just basically watched some of those games and wrote reports and just kept sending them to Bet Goddard and our GM of women's football, Phil Harper, until they would eventually give me a job. So, it's been awesome to be involved in footy for a long time and make that move across from admin to footy. Always just loved the game and the draft and talent side of it. And gradually, just with the women's comp evolving and the pathway, it's become a job now. So that's pretty fortunate for me.
That's good. So obviously in the list management side of things, obviously in the most recent trade period, losing Montana McKinnon to the Tigers, obviously unfortunate to lose someone of her caliber, but, wanted to have a change.
Yeah, that's correct. We were obviously disappointed that Mon decided to leave, but we also respected her decision, and Mon was really clear and has been really clear and honest in the past about her desire to be a number one ruck. And probably with us, she's shared that role with Caitlin Gould previously, and then last year with Jess Allen, and moving forward, that opportunity to be the number one probably wasn't going to exist immediately here. And so Mon wanted to explore her opportunities, and she's got one with Richmond. So, very sad to see Mon go. Mon and her family were great club people while she was with us, but now she's got a chance at the Tigers, and we wish her well, just not when she plays against us.
Very true. Obviously, two key signings throughout the trade period was obviously Caitlin Gould, you speak of, and Zoe Prowse. Obviously, both are apparently linked to the Bulldogs and had toured the Bulldogs. How confident were you in that time that they would remain? Because obviously at times it looked like from the outside that they were considering their options.
Yeah, there's always a lot that goes on during that period. There's been a lot of movement in the women's space over the past few years. Look, Caitlin and Zoe were a big part of our club and our team, and we were always confident that they would stay. But as we know, conversations happen at that time of year, and players sometimes need to explore things to, make sure that this is the best environment for them. Fortunately, they came to that decision, fortunately for us, and they'll continue to be a big part moving forward. But, we were always keen for them to remain, and just reaffirmed how important they are to us. Obviously, both had career best years last year, and obviously enjoying the environment and getting the best out of themselves. So we're really pleased that they've decided to stay.
In the draft, you obviously brought in three players: Lily Tarlington, Tamara Henry, and Brooke Borlow. How important was it to get those girls in, and were they girls that you guys tracked for a fair way out?
They were. So Lily is actually quite a funny story. So Lily is from Gold Coast in Queensland and came through the Queensland talent pathway and missed out in a few drafts, but probably in the last 12 months really decided to give footy a go and started doing some extras and had her own S&C coach and really decided that she wanted to pursue footy. And Lily had a really good year with Bond Uni up in the Quaffle, helping them to win the flag. And then she was invited to train on with Brisbane. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but players who aren't selected in their AFLW teams each week can take part in scrimmage matches where clubs play with and against other clubs. So we had a scrimmage match up in Brisbane at Springers before we played Brisbane up there in an AFLW game. And we were playing with Gold Coast and against Brisbane. And just to even up the numbers and the positions, Lily ended up playing for us in that scrimmage match. And we were really impressed. So we'd obviously seen her at Bond and what she was able to do during the year. But having a chance to see how she stacked up against AFLW listed players, it was really great opportunity for her, but also for us to see how she went. And she played really well in that game as a sort of ruck forward. So she was someone that we kept in mind. And then when Montana let us know that she was going to pursue another opportunity, we thought Lily would be a good fit there as a forward ruck, probably a little bit different than Mon in terms that we'll probably see Lily develop mostly as a key forward, which is an area we've been looking to bolster, and then she can also back up in the ruck. But yeah, it turns out that Lily was pumped that day in Queensland because she got to pull on the Crows training jumper, because it turned out her family are all massive Crows fans, even though they're from Mackay originally. So that was just a dream for Lily that day, just to pull on the training jumper. So she was beside herself when she got drafted and can hopefully pull on the playing jumper for real in the future. So yeah, we're excited to see what Lily can do. It was an area of need for us, but also she's got some talent and some raw ability that we think can transform into a good player at AFLW level. Brooke Boylo, we rated Brooke really highly. Obviously, she missed out in her bottom age year. She was part of the SA under-18 squad, but missed out on the final cut for the team.
Yep.
And she was playing more as a forward and sort of pinch hitting in the mid. And she took some feedback both from South Adelaide and the state program about building her fitness and what she could do to take her game to the next level. And to her absolute credit, she just went away and off her own bat just really improved her running in different areas of her game. And then she comes out last year and she's starting mid at South Adelaide, finishes second in their BNF, and ends up being an All-Australian midfielder at under-18 national level. So she's a really driven character. She's classic case of white line fever. She's one of the nicest, sweetest people off the field, but once she gets on the field, it's a different story. She's just a competitive beast. Really, really clean hands, really strong at the contest, and works both ways and defends really hard. So, yeah, we're really excited to see what Brooke can do. She's already jumped in and she's in the gym and doing everything she can to get better. So that'll take her a long way in itself. And Tamara Henry from Western Jets in Victoria. Tamara's she's an X Factor sort of player. She's probably more of a hybrid forward, that 171 centimetre size. So she's not a key position player by any stretch, but she has a really good vertical and can mark the ball overhead. I think she was top 3 at the combine in the vertical jump, and just a really powerful athlete. So she can play a little bit taller than probably what her height would suggest, but she's also pretty clean at ground level and knows where the goals are. So she's that in between sort of forward that has enormous upside, real explosive power. So we were really keen to continue adding to our forward mix and bring some players in that give us a little bit of a different look up there. So hopefully Tamara can help us in that space moving forward.
Now, obviously, you guys were a part of that mega trade. I think I've forgotten how many you're involved, how many picks. There's too many. In that process, obviously, because there's some South Australian girls who were part of the state draft only. Was there ever any consideration in that mega trade for yourself personally to try and have a pick before Port Adelaide? Obviously, Piper Window, Port selected with the first pick in the state draft. Was Piper always something that you were looking into, or did you have another strategy in mind? Because obviously she's a talented player for the state as well and the competition as well.
Oh, Piper's certainly talented. She trained with us through the AFLW Academy a little bit last season, both Piper and Elaine Grigg. And, each club goes into these trade and, signing periods with different strategies. And I think you said it at the time that you'll have to ask Port Adelaide, but I don't think there was any way they were going to be giving up the first pick in the SA draft. Obviously, with the the dynamics of the women's draft, players being able to nominate their home state or nationally throws a little bit of a different look. So I think it was pretty clear to us that nothing was going to happen to change the strategy around our first pick. So our probably focus in that period was then improving our overall draft hand, and we knew we were only going to have the 3 picks. So trying to bring in our second and third picks a little bit more to give ourselves the best chance of securing the players that we were interested in with those 2 picks. But yeah, I think obviously that deal was chaos, really. I don't think we forecast at the start of the trade period that we'd end up in an 11 club, 12 player, however many picks trade that it was. So that was certainly unique. But yeah, I think everyone held out until the deadline, didn't they? Really, I don't think Port were letting that pick go. But that's a question for Naomi, I think.
Yeah, very true. Now, I'm not talking about the state draft as how it's run in the women's compared to the men's competition. Do you like how it's worked where there is state drafts, or do you feel it should be a national draft like the men's draft is?
I actually really liked the model that the AFL introduced last year, whereby the players had a choice. So for some players, because we're still in, I think it should go to a national draft eventually. I think that's where we're headed, and that will make it easier. I think it's actually more challenging for recruiters in the women's draft because there's different nuances and things you have to take into consideration because of the state base. But we are still a part-time competition, and I think giving players the option, just for some players, it's not going to be possible to move for half the year to pack up life if their families and work, and which is still a consideration at this point. And also just clubs being able to cover off talent right across the country and make sure we're putting the right support around those players that do move state. So I definitely think we will get there and we should go national. But I think the model last year, I think the national rate was above 60% of players that nominated nationally anyway. So that model seemed to have worked, and maybe let it settle for another year or two, and as we push towards more professional and closer to hopefully full-time for the players and staff in the future.
But so obviously, how much work you put in? A lot of work, obviously, years in advance, I'm sure. How much work did you, for example, do with the draftees this year and in the trade period when you try and target players? How far in advance are you looking into these players? And I'm sure some come up last minute if someone makes a surprise change of state or whatever. But how do you approach those periods in advance, looking in players?
It's a lot of work. I think now that the AFL and the states have done a great job in that the talent pathway for the girls now is quite similar to the men. So we've now got under 16 girls competition. So you're watching players sort of from under 16s, the players that make state squads especially, you're able to keep an eye on from pretty much that point onwards. And then, you kind of have to be across what's going on, even if you end up picking. So we picked Brooke Boylo out of the South Australian draft with our first pick, but our next 2 picks were national. So you really have to do the work across the board to make sure that you're across all the talent, because even though on draft night you have a bit of an idea where players might go, you still don't know. It's still a draft. So you kind of have to be prepared and then have your interviews and your backgrounds and, have spoken to coaches and families. So there's a lot of work that goes into it in identifying those players and tracking them, and then also finding out what they're doing and where they're nominating. That adds a different dimension to it as well. But some of the players we would have been watching from a couple of years out, and then others might be closer if they're nominating for a pool. If a player suddenly decides to nominate nationally and you thought they were going to stick in their home state, then a little bit of last minute homework gets done as well. But generally we like to do a lot of groundwork and getting to know players earlier in the year so that we're prepared for anything really.
So you keep the relatively same list as last year. Obviously, Anne Hatchard and Ebony Marinoff both signing long-term deals. Obviously, the contract length, I think, was it changed this year till 4 years. Should the limit be more, and should it be basically unlimited and should have however long you want to sign them to? Or are you happy with how it is?
I think you actually can. You can extend beyond the CBA, and we've seen a couple of examples of that in the men's. But I think for us, I can only speak for our club, but there's been a lot of change, obviously, in the women's game since the inception of the competition, and rules change and list management structures have changed. So I think there's an element of risk that goes with signing beyond players, because you kind of don't know what you're signing them to exactly. And it's a bit easier in the men's because the modelling probably hasn't changed too much, and list sizes and the talent pathway and all those bits and pieces. But I think it was great to be able to sign players for multi-year deals, and we felt like that length was good for Ebony and Anne after sort of being out of contract. Every player in the comp's pretty much been out of contract effectively every 6 or 12 months for the last 3 years. So I know the players were really keen to have a bit of security and help them plan their lives and their families. And it's good for the clubs too, because we can plan and be a bit more strategic, knowing who's going to be in, and being able to look forward and identify needs. And I think it's great for both parties there. And I'm sure we'll start seeing some long deals, but we felt like 4 was a pretty good length of time for those two.
For sure. Obviously, the season length obviously gets talked about a fair bit. You know, it should be longer, should play every team once, etc., like that. How do you feel in that situation with the season length and how long it is now?
I'll probably side with the players in that we'd want more games for more footy, but we also understand that the comp has grown significantly since 2017, since that very first season, and there are factors that come into it from an AFL point of view. So I think there's been some metrics that have been set for attendances and viewership and things like that that'll help the game to develop moving forward. So I think everyone involved in our program would love to see it go to a full season and everyone play each other once in finals at some stage. But we also understand not rushing into that straight away. So the comp, I think, is getting better, and the competition is stronger, and the results are tighter, and I think that'll continue, and it'll just go from strength to strength. So hopefully we can get there in the future, so that these players can be full time and have the same opportunity as the men's do.
Sure. What would you say is the best trade/draft story for you personally? I know you've been there for a couple of years as a list manager. What's one of the best success stories for you?
Oh, I think we'd be pretty happy with Niamh Kelly at the moment from a trade point of view. Niamh had obviously joined us in between the 2 seasons that we had in 2022, and didn't have too long to settle. I think it was sort of a 6-week break, and moving cities and getting to know a whole new place to live, and a whole new team and structures and game plans and role. It was a lot. And then Niamh, unfortunately, and she probably ended up helping us win the game, and made a diving smother on the goal line against Collingwood at Victoria Park and popped her shoulder out. And she's tough. She managed to come back during the season, but was playing impeded, sort of one arm for the second part of the season. But just to see how hard she worked in the off season, not only to rehab that shoulder, but doing vision with our development coach and midfield coach Courtney Cramey and our coach Matthew Clark, and working with our S&C, the amount of time she put into her game to then see her come out and play the way she did. We were just over the moon for her. She's a ripper human, great family, and just to see the work she put in, and then become just the second Irish player behind Orla O'Dwyer to be All-Australian. I know that really meant a lot to her, and it was an absolute credit to the work that she put in. So Niamh would certainly come to mind.
Yeah, she's had a great year, as you mentioned, being All-Australian. I know in that prelim, it was a heartbreaking loss. Any loss, particularly in that position. But I feel personally, being at that game as well, that she stepped up in that last quarter, or the whole game, but in particular that last quarter, where the chances were there, she was always there to be in that mix.
Absolutely. Yeah, she had a knack of finding those moments. When we played North over here earlier in the season, and it was perfect actually, because her mum and dad had come to watch that game, and Dad hadn't been to Adelaide before, and they were able to watch her kick the winning goal in that game, and they were just beside themselves. It was such a special moment for them to be there as well. So, yeah, she had a knack of popping up and kicking some goals or doing something special when we needed her. So hopefully, she's still relatively new to the game in football terms, she spent a couple of seasons at West Coast as well. But we still think she's got plenty of room to improve, which is exciting.
Sure, I've got a few more questions for you, so real pleasure coming on. Amy Boyle Carr, coming in recently, a fellow Irish woman. What was it like bringing her in from a different background, and how did that opportunity come about?
With Amy, we were actually watching, it was about last April or May when we had the supplementary draft, and we were looking for a forward to come in and help bolster that area, and we were watching a bit of Yvonne Bonner, so that had come up pretty late. Obviously, Yvonne was at Giants and then went back to Ireland, and I think we all thought she'd retired, and then sort of very late in the piece she was keen to come and give footy another crack. So we were actually watching some vision of Yvonne, and this sort of flash kept coming across the screen in some of the Donegal vision that we were watching, and Amy Boyle Carr was part of that team playing with Yvonne, and there was one clip, it's on TikTok, she just goes on this massive run with what we would call the wing. I'm not sure what it's actually called in Gaelic. They'll have to correct me on that one. So we started watching a little bit more of Amy's vision and just her speed and run, and obviously an accomplished Gaelic player, but she also played soccer growing up and represented Ireland at a World Cup qualifier when she was only sort of 17, 18. So she's already shown some ability to, be a cross-coder. So hopefully she picks the third one up just as quickly, but she's honouring her Gaelic commitments back home in Ireland at the moment, so she won't arrive until later in pre-season. But yeah, we wanted to add some speed as well, and obviously seeing the success of someone like Niamh and even Yvonne when she was able to come in and play off a limited background too. Just that raw speed, and it'd be good to see the sprint work between Amy and Niamh when she does get here, because it might be she might give Niamh a good run for her money. But yeah, hopefully she can pick that level up. She's a really good human as well, and we're excited to get her out here, albeit it won't be for a little while until she's finished her Gaelic commitments.
And that's very cool too, because normally sometimes some people just need that one game to shine, and that could end up getting them seen and picked up eventually. But this is this is the first time I've heard of an example like this. You're watching footage of someone else, and they're floating in the background of the highlights package, and they end up getting picked up. That's actually really cool to hear that. Yeah,
absolutely. Like you said, sometimes it just takes a moment or a glimpse or the right person to be watching it at the right time. But yeah, we obviously went and watched a little bit more and did some more background and had a chat to Amy a couple of times to find out a bit more about her. But yeah, she can probably thank Yvonne a little bit for helping to bring her to our attention.
Sure, just two more questions. Appreciate you coming on. So the biggest improver in the girls' side this year that has been there already, who is someone that you feel is the biggest improver, and someone that's got a good future in them that people need to keep an eye out on?
I think we had a few last year. Someone like Zoe Prowse, really cementing her spot, and we obviously had some challenges with Sarah Allen injuring her hamstring quite badly right on the eve of the season, and then Najwa Allen was injured and then suspended as well. So I think our backline really stood up, and they were quite young back there at times. So I thought Zoe was great in that regard, and probably Sarah Goodwin coming into that backline as well. She'd only played 5 games prior to last season, but I thought you speak of Niamh before stepping up in big moments. I thought Sarah's game in our losing final against Brisbane was probably her best game for the season. So it's pretty impressive when you have young players that can stand up in big games like that. So I think she's got a very bright future. And Tia Charlton, Maddie Newman, Abby Ballard, Kira Mueller, there's a few that are still under that 22 age bracket that I think we're just scratching the surface with. Jess Allen and Danielle Ponta working together in the midfield was pretty cool to watch in the second half of the season. So hopefully there's a lot of players. We've still got a pretty young crew, young squad. I think we're the 5th youngest in the comp this season. So hopefully a lot of upside within that group. Someone to look out for this year. Oh, we're very early in the year. So probably can't tell you off of form just yet. But I think someone like a Tay Levy, hopefully, who came in from basketball. She was a cross-coder for us. Played 3 games, I think. Actually gave the handball to Niamh to kick that goal to win against North Melbourne here. I know Tay is really working hard in the off-season. She's going to play some Sample W footy over here as well. So I'd be really keen to see how she goes. And hopefully just the group together, if everyone can improve 1 or 2% from hard work, then hopefully we win those 1, 2, 3 point games and can go a bit better and be, challenge those 2 teams that were up the top and deserve to be there last year.
For sure. Now, the biggest question of this entire interview, when is the fixture coming out?
That if I had the answer to that, I'm sure the rest of our club would like to know as well. No, hopefully not too far away. I think we need to get some dates, hopefully, for pre-season first, so the girls know when they're going to start training. But hopefully soon. Probably a question for someone at AFL House rather than me, unfortunately. I wish
That's
I knew.
right. I'll try to give it a try, Katrina. I really appreciate you coming on. All the best for the upcoming season for the team and your crew and the list management crew. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you.